about the power of silence. It is the only episode wherein if I start the show by saying nothing, I look wise. In our everyday chaos, the WhatsApp pings, the email floods, meetings that could have been emails, emails that should have never existed, silence becomes a luxury. Silence is something which we all wish to have, but seldom attempt to make it into our lives. It is like that last piece of chocolate in the fridge, which everyone wants but none gets. However, silence is never passive, it's very powerful. It's not a weakness but a strength, especially if you are a leader. Silence helps you calm storms, reveal truth, and if I have to say out of my own experience, it saves you from saying something that can impact your appraisal. So tonight we have a very powerful panel with us. Let me introduce quickly Dr. Dhaval Sheth. Dhaval is a friend, but he is also a partner with Grant Thornton. My colleague managing the operations of the firm in Gujarat, has keen interest in education, business development and coaching. Dhaval has been a great supporter to Boss versus Coach series, and there could be no one else than a person like him who is admired highly by not only his team but the colleagues across the firm. And we also have our very own Olivia. Olivia, mic checked.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
So I said, Olivia, all is checked now. Ready to speak?
Always ready to speak, but
Yes.
also ready for silence.
Great. That's what is needed. So Dhaval, I think you can quickly tell something about yourself to the audience, and then we can take the show ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Mohit, for the introduction, and thanks, Olivia. Basically, my name is Dr. Dhaval Sheth, and I have been uh, having an experience of more than 23 years working across industrial parks, ACCs, and so on and so forth, and now a partner with Grant Thornton managing the Gujarat region. Just to give you a opening hook, basically in leadership, we often think of power comes from speaking, giving directions, motivating, and influencing. But what if true power sometimes lies in saying nothing? So, today's topic on silence, I believe silence is not absent, it's a presence. And over to you, Mohit, on that note.
Thank you. Thank you. Olivia, your take on silence as a powerful tool and not a sign of weakness?
It's an interesting thing, I think, that so often people are really uncomfortable with silence because they think that it is an absence of thought, of deliberation, and actually so important for us to have a moment sometimes of pause to get our thoughts in order. And the world is made up of introverted people who might well think to speak, but often is dominated by those extroverted people who speak to think. And so, they need to be talking all the time and taking up all of the space. But then you have to ask yourself, what are you missing from those people who are sitting there thinking to be able to speak and have formulated a really good thought? But all of the talk has moved away from the topic where they could add real value. So I think it's so easy for us all to be stuck on transmission. We're all powering in with our thoughts rather than sitting back and noticing maybe who isn't talking. Maybe there's a look on their face that makes us pause to think maybe there's something that they now need to say. So I think as a leader, it's so important to be using your eyes, using your intuition, and noticing what isn't yet being said and giving it space.
So, Olivia, picking on that thought, I also believe that leaders are always under pressure. I won't say obligation, I won't say control, but I'll say pressure to speak. They're also always seems to be under pressure to take the lead in talking in every situation, in every forum, and in every meeting. So what drives that instinct? And how can those leaders be asked to check on whether there was a need for really talking in that time?
It's an interesting one. Where do we think that pressure comes from? I think it comes from inside us, and maybe throughout one's career. You know, you are trying to be noticed, trying to be heard, trying to make space for yourself. But when you get to a leadership role, you have that space. You don't need to compete anymore. You can calm down. And so the pressure to keep being noticed and keep being noisy, I think, is an old strategy which maybe worked well while people were getting up through the ranks. But actually, when you're in the space of leadership, you can be generous. You can allow others to have the floor and let them share what's important for them.
And
So,
Dhaval, yeah,
yeah.
Dhaval, please. Yeah, tell
Mohit, I
me.
was just saying it is basically, the if you see from the psychological perspective, leaders equate speaking with control and authority. That is what my personal opinion. You know,
Mm.
silence feels uncomfortable because it really creates an uncertainty. Is what the psychological impact it leaves when you become a leader. That's my 23 years of experience, which comes into the act. Basically, just let us take a very simple example. In a high stake meeting, many bosses or the leaders, I won't use bosses, but leaders, you know, jump in to fill the gap instead of letting the team think that what they want to represent. You know,
Mm.
uh, silence can be a signal of confidence, not a weakness. That is what I personally believe. So
And,
yeah, I'll just leave it open to you guys to.
and Dhaval, one thing, like you being a leader, so Dhaval, you being a leader and you have been dealing a large team, meeting clients because of your profile day in, day out. Is there anything, any situation you would like to share where silence helped you more than talking?
So, Mohit, one of the very good examples is, and I quote, there is one additional chief secretary who's about to retire in the government of Gujarat. You know, so that means he's around 60 years. Obviously, he wants to always show that, he is at the topmost priority. Consultants do not understand things, he is exceptionally good with his English, but sometimes that English also, feels there are unnecessary words which are put up in the statements. But initially, I used to, speak or counter him. But over a period of time, I understood that, it does not make any sense. Let us do what he wants to do, or let us put in our thoughts and give it to him and let him point out the mistakes. That is where we keep silent. We put in our points, we put in our thoughts into the documents that we require, and then he reviews it, and then it becomes, yeah, it's good to go. So I think it's more like we listen, we hear him out, we keep silent, and on the other hand, we put our thoughts in the documents which he reads and then he approves it.
That's a great example. Olivia, getting back to our theme of boss versus coach, what's your view on how silence can help develop psychological safety and deeper trust within the teams?
Yeah, I think if you are a boss who's always telling, and that suggests that you have the answer, your answer is the correct answer, then for your team, it could feel very unsafe to chip in with their own perspective. So they'll let you do all the talking, and they'll let you be right all the time. The challenge with that is, where does innovation come from? Where does a fresh perspective ever come from? And also, where does the learning land? because if people are only ever absorbing, they're not having a chance to articulate for themselves, to try ideas out loud. So as a coaching leader, you can give people a great question and just let them sit with it and encourage them that you just want to hear their answer. You're not looking to judge. You're just wanting to know where they're thinking it, and give them that space. And we've often talked on our podcast and in our chats about how you can feel so judged by a leader, and therefore being given silence by a leader can feel like maybe it's a trap, or maybe there's a wrong thing that you're about to say. And I think as a real coaching leader, you can just help people to find their voice, help them to find their answers, and that in turn helps them to maybe challenge your thinking a little bit, maybe to offer perspectives that you haven't come across. So I think it's a really healthy space to be able to step back and not be the only one who knows everything, because none of us are.
Agree. Very true. My question to Dhaval. Dhaval, silence often in today's time is misconstrued as weakness or lack of knowledge. The general perception is that if you go silent, people get an impression that either you don't have the knowledge on talking on that agenda going around in that room, or somewhere that you don't have that courage to speak. How do you wish to break this myth?
So, Mohit, just going to the topic and the boss versus coach, I would like to give you a perspective of the how I would look at boss versus coach through a different lens. You know, boss usually uh, fills silence to assert authority, avoid discomfort, or dominate. These are the three parameters I believe. While coach uses silence to invite reflection,
Mm.
empower others, and build trust in them. For an example, a boss will say, "Here's what you should do," while a coach would pause and ask, "What do you think is the best way forward?" So this is one of the things that I feel is pretty important. Just coming back to the question you had, you know, uh, how basically how would a boss perceive silence and versus a coach? That is something that I would like to see. A boss often sees silence as weakness and disengagement. If like I mentioned, they fill the silence to assert authority. A coach, on the other hand, uses silence as a tool to listen deeply, encourage the reflections, and empower ownership. Silence becomes a space for growth, not a gap to be filled. So that is what I personally feel.
Agree, very true. Silence is a space for you to introspect and not a gap in terms of knowledge. Olivia, how do you see this situation where silence is perceived as lack of knowledge or lack of courage to speak?
Well, one of the things I often hear, and particularly from coaches in training, is, but if we give them silence, it becomes really awkward. That awkward silence where you think, the person's just not speaking. So I'll fill the gap. I'll make it less awkward. And that might feel like you're doing a really helpful thing. But I've had it myself, actually, a little story when I was first learning coaching. And I was in a group, and someone was coaching me, and they asked me a question. And normally, actually, I do speak to think. So I'll normally chatter. But it was a really great question, and it made me stop. And I was thinking through what was important to me, and then they asked the question in a different way and said, "Oh, and it totally broke my thinking." And that was a really live lesson for me as to how it feels when you are actually quite deep in figuring something out and someone else takes that away from you by breaking that silence. So what I often say to people is, if you think of it as a productive silence instead of an awkward silence, that can help you reframe what's going on for the other person. And you know when someone is thinking by looking at them, by noticing what's happening on their face, because they will probably be talking to themselves inside, or they're accessing different memories or whatever. So you can see when they're active in their thinking. And equally, you can see when someone is just stuck and they're just looking at you, waiting for you to say something else. And at that moment, you could say, would you like me to ask the question a different way, or are you still thinking? So again, you're just giving them more questions so that they can say, actually, I'm just a bit stuck. Can you say it again differently, or whatever they need? And it doesn't have to be awkward at all. But I think that there is a pressure inside so many of us that active equals busy equals useful, and therefore silence equals inactive equals not useful, which is an unfortunate equation to hold on to.
Agree. And I think that's the biggest misconception going around. When someone goes silent, it's that he's giving time to himself, he's giving time to others to speak and share. It's not that he is running away from that situation. So silence is power, silence is for you to reflect within. And to me, silence is also an opportunity to think, do I really need to speak? Because there are moments where it's just not required to talk, but let the flow of conversation from others to flow and just listen. Because silence also encourages active listening, which we often miss out on. On that note, thank you, Dhaval, thank you, Olivia, for such insightful discussions and conversations. And for the viewers, now, after this, please adopt silence with full confidence that you will not be seen as someone who is running away or losing on thoughts, but someone who knows how to use silence as power. As is said, I was reading a poetry sometimes back which says, खामोश रह के भी मैं असरदार हूँ, ये मेरा अंदाज है जिसमें मैं बेमिसाल हूँ. On that note, good night, goodbye. Keep watching Boss vs. Coach and do let us know what topic would you like us to speak on next. Thank you. Bye bye. Thanks, Dhaval. Thank you, Olivia.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
guys.
Thank
Good
you.
night.